Hey YouTube, welcome to episode 3 of the Devlog. Today we're talking exclusively about our secret esport in the making. Starting straight off, if you weren't able to guess from last episode the name of our game, it's now called Tag.
Tag is a 1v1 movement shooter, and the objective of the game is to chase or run away from your opponent. In our time playing Titanfall 2 custom game modes, and also watching World Chase Tag and playing our own game of World Chase Tag in real life, the feeling of adrenaline was through the roof. And we want to emulate the exact same feeling when players play our game.
Think about like the craziest comeback you've ever had, but over the span of an entire round, running for your life using everything in your kit to escape capture. Only when the round ends can you stop to breathe. Your senses are heightened, and you're trying to think 10 steps ahead of your opponent. This is the feeling we're trying to capture with Tag, that feeling of 1v9ing in League or solo squad wiping in Apex Legends.
Basically, if you didn't guess it, our game is Tag. It's a 1v1 movement shooter where heavily focused on. If you couldn't tell over these past few like devcasts and devlogs, we really enjoy movement because it's really fun and it's a skill that is hard to get down and build the muscle memory for. And it feels really rewarding when you do. And uh, like we said in the nice little script here, uh, the adrenaline you get and the feeling you get when like being chased or like playing tag or just running or just all those feelings is something we want to try to build into the game. Um, but that's not all. We're not just telling you the game name and telling you this idea. We're gonna go into some of the mechanics, actually talk about it.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty pretty big and important devlog for us today.
I think yeah, we could just get straight into talking about mechanics. Starting off with the movements or movement stuff. Obviously, we said a lot of it was gonna be Titanfall 2. So you're gonna have wall running, you're gonna
Yep.
have
Wall
wall
running,
jumping, you're gonna have
sliding,
sliding.
slide hopping,
Still
bee
undecided about
hopping.
diving. There's bee hopping. There's corner turning.
Diving,
No,
we have some interesting ideas for.
nothing about tap strafing
Um,
yet, or any of that
Nothing
kind
about
of
tap strafing
moving
yet.
over. There will be abilities.
Mhm.
Yes,
Abilities will help you replicate that,
Yeah,
but
there is abilities in
if
the
you
game.
wanted to hop around a corner, you could just jump off the wall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jumping on and jumping off a wall, it's jumping, and it'll be like kind of its own part of while running.
Kind of
The
like
goal is
Lucio,
that
if you
all
know
these
him.
movement mechanics, yeah, kind of all these movement mechanics will combine together really well and will feel really fleshed out and fluid. That's the whole like point of our movement in our game. Is it's
Yeah.
supposed to be really movement forward, really movement heavy, and it started out as being purely movement. I don't think we really had abilities.
We
Like
didn't
we
have a lot
had
of
abilities,
abilities.
but not thought out well
Yeah.
yet. And we'll get to that. We got perks, abilities, all these
Got
other
lots of good
things.
stuff. So yeah, so I think we said a
Um,
lot of the stuff, and then one main thing we have is basically like I don't. There's speed decay. I guess we'll talk about speed decay a little bit. It's not too
yes,
important.
there's two different kind of basic mechanics. We won't go into too much,
Too much,
but
but
it's
we
called flow state
yeah
and like speed decay or like wind resistance is what we're calling
yeah.
it, like air resistance, which basically basically the goal is that it's not just like, oh, you use the movements and you go faster. It's you string together multiple movements to make you go faster. So let's say minimum movement is 0, right? Your minimum movement is 0 and your maximum movement is 500. Now,
Okay.
we do have like the parallels. So if you're in Unreal Engine 500 and our game is basically 3000 velocity, and that's going to be the max speed and the max you'll ever be able to go is that 500. But you're not going to be at the constant 500, right?
Ever.
Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
really hard to maintain a maximum 500 if possible at all. It should be possible to hit it, but it'll be really hard to maintain it, and that's because of speed decay.
Yeah.
Basically, every time you touch the ground and you keep running, your speed's going to lower back down to about a 75 to 125 range. I'm not going to go too far into like all of the numbers for each kind of thing,
Yeah.
but they're here, they're planned out. But it'll drop back down to your running speed if you're not constantly
not
jumping off walls,
avidly
slide
being
hopping.
in the air and other things.
If you're not, yeah, if you're not doing anything that would normally move your speed up by a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say, for the sake of keeping things simple, sliding adds 20, like an additional 25 speed towards your stuff. So
Yeah.
if you're running at 125, boom, you slide, you're now at 200 speed, right?
Yeah.
Numbers need to be a little bit adjusted to make
Yeah.
sense,
The numbers are all
it's
right
kind of
now,
its own
just so
thing.
we're able to get the prototype going and get everything going. But
Yeah, it's
basic
for
idea-
ease of use.
the basic
Because
idea-
Unreal Engine uses velocity,
Yeah.
not a 1 to 500. It uses velocity, so we have a conversion rate and all that.
yeah.
Which
But it's easier to say
we'll get into
that
later
than
once we
getting
talk
into
fully about.
specific values.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to say, there's the two main things besides the fact that we have a lot of innovative movement, or not necessarily innovative, but the two things we're adding are innovative, including diving, which doesn't exist in any other game pretty much.
Yeah,
so-
diving in the sense of it's giving you speed or negating some
Negating
loss of
some of the
speed.
stuff. Yeah.
Something in a way of using diving to boost your movement in some way.
So we have flow state, which you can only enter and exit basically
Mm-hmm.
by doing a lot of strings of movement and not getting a lot of
Yeah.
speed decay. And then you have speed decay or wind resistance, or it doesn't really make sense as wind resistance because of hitting the ground was when it's activated, but it kind of acts like
Right.
friction to the ground. So whenever you hit the ground, you take a certain amount of speed loss for touching the ground / touching objects. So and it only happens at a certain speed. So if you're running underneath that value, then you won't experience any.
Yeah, so
just makes it
flow
so you
state,
have to
flow
do
state is
moves.
activated once you hit 350 plus speed. Could change, right? All these numbers could change. They're also not like the actual velocity values, so it's kind of whatever we say it is. But for example, 350 speed, that's you stringing together constant wall rides, jumping off the wall, sliding onto a wall, to jumping, running, using your abilities to gain speed, all that stuff, and stringing together these things in a constant, like one after another, will inevitably just put your speed higher, which the longer you're at a high speed, we call it the flow state, and it'll give you different buffs, or it'll allow you to trigger different events with different perks or abilities. As well, it's a way that we can give out a secondary currency based on how long.
And you
you're
can also
in
use it kind of as your own personal tracking to see like how easily or how much you stay in flow state, because that really is like a performance meter. You know,
Yeah.
it definitely helps you track your own performance a lot better. But yeah, so moving on,
All right,
I think that covers all.
Yeah,
of
that's all we should. Yeah, that's all we should talk about.
Yeah.
On the mechanics.
So a standard
for, like,
round.
a few minutes.
We're gonna talk something about just kind of how a standard round goes. Not necessarily ranked or casual. They kind of have both their own kind of quick play or whatever.
Yeah,
you wanna call it. This is specifically just one
is
round, just going by, right? So basically, one person is either the chaser or the tagger, or that's the same thing. The tagged or the runner, and then the chaser. So one person has to chase after somebody, the other person has to run after that person, run from that person.
The runner has 3 chances to run away to score a point for each successful escape. The chaser's job is to then stop the runner from running out the clock. Chasers don't get points for stopping runners.
They can
And
only
runners
just stop runners from getting points, because running away gives you 1 point.
basically. Yeah. So
So
running out the time, which
It's not to
for
say
this
that
example, we'll use
tagging
3
is not
minutes.
important, but running is what actually scores you points. And
running is what scores you points. And as a
tagging
chaser, you
denies
don't
you
want the runner to get
score
points,
points,
because you don't want
yeah.
your opponent to get points.
Exactly.
It's very simple.
Um,
At halftime, after one person has ran 3 runs, you'll swap roles, and then so whoever was chasing in the first half will now have their chance to run, and whoever is running will now be stopping the runner from trying to get
exactly.
points. Yeah, and that's
Cool.
that's the basic overview of
The basic
how
overview of
a
how it
round
works.
functions.
Yeah.
There's
no
a lot more
specific-
minute details.
yeah.
We'll go into those.
There's no specific
later,
time
but-
for how long rounds go, and rounds can go. You have no penalties for how long you take to end a round. So the round could end in the first 5 seconds if you don't know how to run, and
Yeah.
The round could take the entire amount of time and end in the last 0.2 seconds if you can time it well enough. So yeah, cool. So that's basically how a round goes. We kind of touched on basics on ranked a little bit there.
Just a little bit. That was basically the game mode for ranked, since we are playing more towards
Primarily
ranked.
ranked.
We'll get
Yeah,
into
yeah.
what casual looks like later.
I think
I don't know if there's anything else we want to touch on ranked.
yeah. So for ranked, I think it was like
I don't think
we didn't have.
I don't think we
a
need to
runner,
talk
chase,
about.
or queue. We didn't have any of that. It was
Yeah,
undecided
I don't
on
think I don't think
the
we talk
randomness of
about.
starting.
I don't think we talk about the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
Right
we talk about
now,
that.
right now,
I
it's
think we'll
undecided.
make a whole video
Yeah.
on how the rank system
Mhm.
actually works, and
Yeah.
we'll go through and
Exactly. Right now, it's undecided
Talk that out
how
later.
the selection of runner or chaser first start is.
I do have an idea about
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
We
yeah,
can
but
talk
right now
about
it's
it
it's
later.
not. It's
But
not. Yeah.
it could
I'm saying
be
undecided
based
because I
off
think
of
I think
just
we
like
have a
how
couple.
chess works.
Specifically,
You know
yeah.
how chess works,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where you won't get black 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
At most, you can get it twice, and then you're guaranteed.
Specifically,
to play
I'm
white.
mad about
So-
coming from Overwatch, where you get random maps, and especially Overwatch 2, where you get push maps, because I hate push
Mhm.
maps. And so it's all randomized. You can get the same map 3 times in a row, and I have, and it's awful. So definitely trying to avoid that for ranked. So that's definitely what we'll cover in the next, or not next one, but when we do get around to it.
When we cover
Um,
ranked.
Cool.
Yeah.
So going into that, we're going to the next thing. We have abilities. This is an ability-based
Yep.
game. It's an
Yep.
ability,
Ability and perk
movement-based game.
systems.
Yeah.
Um.
What to talk about?
Up
With
to you if
those
you want to talk
specifically?
about it, or
I don't know. Are we?
I
How
I
deep
know what
are
to
we
talk
getting
about
into
if you'd like me to.
perks? How deep are we getting into that?
Not talking about variations, just
Okay. Just regular ones?
just
Okay.
that perks
Yeah.
exist, kind of how they affect
So-
your game, and same with abilities.
Yeah. So abilities play a core role in the game, basically. About as much as Overwatch, I would say. Maybe about as much as League, but maybe somewhere in the middle. They're pretty
Probably
substantial.
more.
They're pretty substantial.
Your abilities, your abilities are the way to push your speed past the limits of your movement mechanics.
Yeah.
Because movement mechanics will only get you to a max certain speed. The way you get past that, the way to play in 450 to 100 range of
Mm-hmm.
is utilizing abilities, making sure your cooldowns are. That being said, not every ability is movement based.
Mm-hmm.
And not every movement ability positively affects your movement. It might negatively affect
That's
your
true.
opponent's movement, stuff like that. I think we should specify how they work in the gameplay.
Okay.
As in, basically, when you start up the game, you'll be offered to select 3 abilities and perks.
Mm-hmm.
So from the list of all the abilities you have in the game, whether they're locked, not fully decided, but saying they're all unlocked, you'll be able to pick 3 abilities, and abilities relatively should be able to all work together.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they won't. If we're trying to get really creative with an ability, they might not.
There's
but
not like a
it's
limiting
kind of-
factor. There's not something limiting you.
Yeah,
from
there's
choosing
there's
any
nothing
of the 3.
limiting you to choose.
They just
any
may
of them,
not combo
which
well.
right. But that gives the players the creativity to figure out the
decide
combos
if they
for
want it to
themselves and
combo well,
figure
yeah.
out how to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and figure them out, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Perks.
And as for perks basically, I don't know if you wanna take this. You can take it if you want.
You can say
talk
whatever,
about
it's
it.
fine.
Perks basically are kind of how you think of like Call of Duty modifications, except that's how it started, right?
Yeah.
It was Call of Duty perks,
Mm-hmm.
little things here and there to affect your gameplay. They've now transformed into something much bigger and much more unique, which is
Yeah.
very good. We like
Mhm.
that. And they're basically a cause and effect based system, I'd say.
Mhm.
Something happens in game, like the tagger gets really close to you, and then your perk activates, right? Cause and
Mhm.
effect. Each perk will have different variations. We won't dive in too deep into that. We'll save
Yeah.
that for another video.
That's pretty deep.
And there's no doubling up the same perks, so you
Yeah.
can't have
You can't
like a
stack
bunch
your,
of the same perks,
activations.
which is fine. Perks at this point are much more unique They're kind of like a sub ability almost.
Yeah, they definitely
Like,
play more of an ability role than like a perk
yeah,
role nowadays. Like if
like
you're thinking like a
they're more like
passive,
passive abilities. Yeah,
yeah, but you can
passive
select
abilities
3 and they're pretty
that don't
substantial.
affect the game as much, right?
Yeah.
As like a normal ability.
And
They
I
still affect the
will
game, so they're still useful, and so there'll
in
still be
ranked,
abilities to build
yeah.
kits and stuff with them. But
In ranked, I will say there is not counter picking, but similar to that idea, kind of like in League
mhm,
where you're represented with the character first, and then from there you can choose your perks, and you have to blind pick your characters.
mhm.
There's still counter picking
It should
in
be
this game.
said, perks you can't change your perks during the entirety of the match,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
all these are kind of just for like a ranked game mode. These are the ranked
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
rule sets. It gets there's other details here and there, so
Hmm.
don't worry about it too much. But you'll be able to switch your abilities at halftime, and you'll be able to, um, you won't be able to change your perks at all. So your perks will have to work for both chaser and runner. So you have to be very smart, strategic with
Hmm.
your perks, because maybe you want to focus your perks on being able to get those escapes and help you with the escapes,
But that makes
or
your
you're already
yeah, it makes your
confident enough
chasing.
with your running, yeah, or you're already confident enough with your running that you put your perks towards your chasing, and
Or
you need to be better
you
at
yeah, or
chasing.
you
So you
split.
give yourself,
You get one that's good
or
for
you balance
running,
it.
one that's
Yeah,
good for chasing, and one that's good for both. Yeah, but otherwise,
yeah.
there's a
So
lot of
it
counter
gives you a
picking
lot of
stuff.
freedom to play your way and play the way you
Hmm.
want.
Yeah.
At some point, metas will come into play and limit creativity to an extent
Hmm.
because some things will just be better than others. It happens with every game. Um,
But I think
so
that will
it's
definitely
normal.
be different
But
per rank. Like each rank will have a different meta just
true.
because of the skill ceiling
Yeah.
for certain
Some things will
abilities.
be high. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's it
like
all works itself out. It's great.
yeah, exactly. So very much fun. Um,
Very much fun.
it is going to be a free to play game. I don't know if we want to touch too much on that. It's kind of obvious
Um,
why we kind of went for that route. Um,
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I feel like we've talked about this before, but basically, free to play games just let you find free to play games just basically let you find audience. Because there's no reason not to play it if it's free to play.
mhm.
There's no reason to try it at least once, and if you don't like it, you don't have to play it again. You didn't spend money on it. But if you do like it, you didn't spend money on it, so it's a great game in your eyes.
Mhm.
Um, and of course, with a game being free to play, there will be something like a battle pass. We haven't figured it out yet because we don't want
Mhm.
a battle pass. It's very
Definitely not.
overdone. Every game basically uses it now.
Mhm.
So we want something more unique and something that's really cool. And so we'll figure that out when the time comes. And there'll definitely be a store to buy different cosmetics. Um, but our goal would be to make them affordable, but still good, still cool looking. Um,
Yeah.
not just like utter trash for every skin and charge like $30 for it, right? Um, but if you needed a reference, look at Fortnite's. It's kind of like the example for free to play
Yeah.
store and priced. Um, don't look at the collaborations so much. Look more like towards like season 6 Fortnite, older Fortnite. Um, that kind of style is how we're pricing it, and that's just because it's free to play. We need to make money to help our studio and help pay for servers. It's a fairly normal thing at this point.
Yeah.
The final thing I'll say about our game being free to play is most esports nowadays are free to play. I
Mhm.
think almost every esport is free to play
Yeah.
nowadays, with Overwatch now being free to play.
Mhm.
Not that it's much of an esport anymore, but
That kind of makes
now that it's
that
free to
completes the
play,
list. Kind of every game now.
that pretty much completes the list for esports being free to play.
Mhm.
Which, as we're trying to make a competitive esport,
Yeah.
it just makes sense.
And um, I don't know even know why I have to say this, but that kind of makes it where obviously the game is in no way, shape or form free, pay to win or any of that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's all based on the competitive audience. It's not.
It's just, yeah. Anything you buy, it's just cosmetics and skins. We'll have to be careful because we don't want skins to like blend into certain maps or
Mhm.
get lost.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that can be solved with just like a colored outline on the characters, right?
yeah.
When you look at them and see them. So
Cool.
there's many ways to solve stuff and make sure that you're not pay to winning. Basically, the way we're going to be introducing all these things going forward is every week, every other week. We haven't figured out exactly what we'll do
Mm-hmm.
next week. At first we were gonna talk about maybe the VR MMO next week and
Mm-hmm.
talk about that. I don't think it's quite ready. I think we might delay it a few weeks before we fully reveal that. I think
Okay.
coming up with a name, coming up with stuff. I think with all the games we have to play this week coming up, getting you to play like Zenith and Skyrim and all that stuff, there's not enough time.
That's true.
Um, so I think we'll save it for a little bit later. But so going forward, we'll probably take one of these things we talked about it, dive into it deeper, talk about it a little bit longer, go more in depth. For example, we could do it with ranked, actually talk about the rank system, how ranking work,
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff that goes on that. Same with movement mechanics. We could break down details, break down each individual little part of movement. And so we'll be doing that for basically every aspect in our game for the next couple of weeks or however long it takes. And then after we've kind of summed up and described the entire game over all these devlogs, we'll then transition into a period where we'll start working on more of the concept even further, as well as develop prototypes. And yeah, we'll start talking about like maybe we want to make an ability or we want to talk about like we could have had a whole conversation today on working out how we want, you know, the ranked who gets decided as chaser or runner to work. We could have had a
Yeah.
whole conversation about
Mm-hmm.
that already. Um, so we'll start doing more topics like that of like we sorted out what to do with this kind of concept in our game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, keep a lookout for tag news. We'll be talking about it definitely more in the coming weeks. We'll be talking about more. It's great that we can actually just start calling it tag now because it feels very nice that we don't have to call it our 1v1 esport. Call it tag. Yeah, that was it. See you guys next week for another devlog.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, do all the fun stuff,
Yeah.
all the YouTube stuff. Helps us out because every subscriber really counts because
Truly.
we got a long ways. We have a
Yeah.
long ways to
We got a
go.
long ways to go.
Um,
And as always, like if you have any questions about tag now that I can actually say it, leave a
mhm.
comment down below or on
Yeah,
any of the socials or
ask us
whatever.
anything.
Ask us
We'll
questions.
we'll
We'll
be
talk
com-
about it next. We'll talk about it next week.
we talk. We can even answer you in the comments. We'll talk about stuff. If it's too big of a topic, we'll save it for an actual devlog
Yeah.
or a show.
We'll definitely get around to
Um,
everything. So.
yeah, so let us know. We'll start the Patreon soon-ish. We're still working
Mm-hmm.
out all the kinks with all of our quality issues and making sure everything's just going right.
Yeah.
So we're still working out stuff, and we're still working out the best way to start pumping out content before we start making even more content for
Mm-hmm.
potentially no one would see on paper. So we're working on it, but we'll get it all set up soon. And yeah, thanks for joining us for the third week of the devlog.
Yeah. See you guys next week.
See you guys next time.